Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're unpacking the profound and honestly fascinating science behind how our dogs experience the world and why the simple act of leaving them alone can trigger genuine physiological panic. Look, if you've ever felt guilty closing that front door behind you, or maybe you've been a bit frustrated by the behavior you come home to, you are definitely not alone. But to truly help our best friends out, we have to look past the surface level and understand the deep neurobiology of their devotion to us.
So let's start with an everyday quirk. You know when you walk into your bedroom and find your dog just happily nestled in a pile of your unwashed clothes? I know, it might seem a little gross to us, but it's actually this incredible display of them using your potent scent to self-soothe and cope with your absence. From an evolutionary perspective, lying on a scent-marked object is basically a way to stay safe. But more importantly, because dirty laundry carries a highly concentrated version of your scent, your dog is essentially creating this little bubble of comfort to feel connected to you when you aren't physically there. It's kind of sweet when you think about it.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the science of the bond and the evolutionary chemistry behind it.
To truly understand canine separation anxiety, we first have to explore the powerful chemistry that connects us to our dogs in the first place. It's not just habit, and it's not just simple affection. It is a biological reality written right into their DNA over thousands of years of domestication. Research from Duke University reveals that dogs have successfully, almost literally, hijacked the human bonding pathway. When you and your dog lock eyes in a sustained mutual gaze, it triggers what's called an oxytocin feedback loop. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone, and a simple gaze from your dog releases the exact same hormones in both of your brains as a human mother making eye contact with her infant. They are literally wired to love us like family.
200 million. That is the number of olfactory receptors a dog boasts. To put that into perspective for us humans, we have a paltry 5 million. This massive biological advantage means they are experiencing this whole invisible three-dimensional world of odors that we can't even begin to comprehend. They don't just bond through sight. They experience their entire world profoundly through scent.
Which brings us perfectly to part 2, how dogs smell time, acting as a ticking clock.
Because of this absolutely incredible olfactory system we just talked about, their sense of smell doesn't just tell them what is in the room right now, they can literally perceive the passing of time. As dog cognition expert Alexander Horowitz explains, hot air rises and falls in currents throughout the day, and these currents move your fading scent around the room. So when you first leave for work, your scent is incredibly strong. But as the hours pass, the concentration of your odor in the air slowly dissipates and physically drops toward the floor. Your dog can literally smell this change. It acts just like a ticking clock that tells them exactly how long you've been gone, and based on routine, when you're likely to return.
Moving on to Section 3, canine separation panic and the neurological breakdown it causes.
Because their biological bond to us is so incredibly profound, and because they're acutely aware of our absence through their senses, our departure can trigger a real crisis. Now, we absolutely have to distinguish between typical new dog nerves, which is basically adaptive distress as they map a new environment and it naturally fades, and true clinical separation anxiety. Clinical separation anxiety is an entirely different beast. It's a pathological panic. The dog's amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, is triggering a severe high cortisol fight or flight response to being alone. To their brain, this isn't just annoying, it is signaling a life-threatening emergency.
Let's look at Section 4, spotting hidden signs and invisible indicators. The tricky part here is that because our dogs can't actually speak to us, we often completely miss this overwhelming panic until it results in a disaster. You know, traditional pet cameras might show a dog sitting quietly, which makes us think, oh, they're totally fine. But modern AI monitoring reveals that we're missing these silent distress signals. A dog might be completely still on the outside, but inside they are experiencing stress-induced tachycardia. That means the resting heart rate is racing in a state of pure panic. They might suffer from fragmented, shortened sleep cycles, repetitive micromovements, and hypervigilance, where they're constantly scanning the room for threats. Their brain is locked in survival mode, even if they aren't making a single peep.
And hey, when they do make a sound, we often misread that too. When dogs vocalize or bark excessively while they're alone, it is never out of spite. Neuroscience tells us these vocalizations carry very specific emotional signatures. While a low-pitched bark might signal a standard defense response, high-pitched howling and whining are actually evolutionary attachment signals. Out in the wild, these sounds are literally meant to reestablish contact with their pack. They're crying out for the family they are biologically wired to need.
And this brings us to a huge misunderstanding regarding destructive behaviors. Chewing through door frames, digging furiously at the carpets, or having accidents in the house. Those are not acts of revenge because you left them alone. Instead, as the science clearly shows, this is a desperate, physical attempt to escape a terrifying, high-stress environment. It's what we call a displacement behavior. Their sympathetic nervous system is just entirely overloaded, and they simply lose control in their panic.
So what do we do? That brings us to Section 5, rewiring canine brains with science-backed protocols. Now that we understand the neurobiology behind all this distress, the good news is we aren't powerless. We can actively help them feel safe again. Let's look at a really effective method, uncoupling departure cues. Dogs are absolute masters of prediction. They learn that the jingle of your keys or the sight of your work shoes means abandonment is imminent. So, to systematically teach the dog's brain that these specific actions no longer predict isolation, you perform the trigger action, like put on your shoes. But then you just go sit on the couch and read a book. You wait for their anxiety to drop, and then you reward that calm behavior. By repeating this, you slowly break that neurological link between your shoes and their panic.
Coupling this behavioral training with a highly predictable daily routine works absolute wonders too. Dogs operate heavily on circadian rhythms. Having a structured routine with consistent feeding times, scheduled rests, and aerobic exercise acts directly on the dog's hypothalamus. It stabilizes their hormones, lowers that circulating cortisol we talked about, and naturally shifts them from a state of chronic vigilance to a feeling of deep safety and predictability. And if you add in cognitive enrichment like puzzle toys right before you leave, you trigger a dopamine release, which changes their emotional state entirely.
You can also use crate training, but honestly, we need to rethink how we use it. This is not about confinement. Instead, think of it as a sensory-gated management tool. By leveraging a dog's natural denning instinct and teaching specific settle cues, you build the dog's executive function and their inhibitory control. You're actively teaching their brain how to shift from a state of high arousal panic into a calm rest and digest state. When done right, the crate becomes a sanctuary, definitely not a prison.
By truly understanding the deep, evolutionary love our dogs hold for us, a bond that's literally mirrored in our shared hormones, we can replace all that human frustration with profound empathy. Separation anxiety is a panic disorder, sure, but it is absolutely one we can heal with a little patience and a lot of science. So, considering all the science we've unpacked today, what small change are you going to make to your routine tomorrow to help your best friend feel totally secure when you close that door? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Catch you next time.